Hi everybody, Rob here from the Oyster House Boys, and in this video I'm just going to do an introduction and overview of ADDAC 112, which is their granular looper processor. So a quick rundown of what I've got going on here. I've got the 1010 Music Bitbox, which I'm just going to use to send some audio into the 112. I've just got a pair here, left and right, going into the patch bay, and the gain is cranked to the appropriate level, just where I want it. Now, just a note on the patch bay, I don't know if you can tell on the video, but this is a separate module linked by two ribbon cables, which is, obviously you can see that the HP cost is reasonably high, but what I love about this is that you can move the patch bay around, so you can have it on either side, top, bottom. You could get some longer ribbon cables and have it completely elsewhere in your system, which makes it much more versatile. And this section here, where all the fun happens, I think is actually quite a reasonable HP cost. Okay, so what do we have here? We have three volume controls, one for the dry signal, one for the loop, and one for the granular. And the main kind of feature that you're obviously going to see is the screen. Now, most times when you see a screen on a module, you kind of go, oh God, I'm going to have to do a loaded menu diving. Actually, you barely have to do any. And once you've done some, you'll probably set it and forget it. All you might use is this for, is 2 clicks to save a preset. Saving a preset captures all of your settings for the module, which you can then store, and then you can address either with the knob or with CV. Now, the patch bay has CV for just about everything on the module, which is brilliant. Now, I'm not going to talk about that too much in this video. I think we'll leave that for a more in-depth video down the line. So let's get started. Let's just turn up the dry volume and let's just play a sample. So I'm going to go for like a Rhodes style piano thing. Okay, so that's just a dry input coming through. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use one of the recording sections here. So we have kind of 3 ways of processing incoming audio. We can either use the audio coming straight in, and we can just granularize it, if that's a word, directly. We can record into the buffer using the new record button, which is what we'll do in a second. And then you can record a new loop by using the new record button. So we have here we have stop, new record, which basically overwrites the previous content of the buffer, depending on which buffer you're in. Record, which will overdub what you've got, and then the play button. So let's just up the volume and I'll record a new bit of audio. Stop that. Okay, so I can turn down the incoming audio now, so the dry volume is set to it's just 0. And if I press play, just talk about this screen again. So this screen, although it's not massive, it has a lot of information. So this main kind of rectangular section is where all the playback kind of representation happens. And if you look at across the bottom line of it, that's the waveform of the captured audio. So let's just turn up the loop volume and I'll press play and we should hear what we just captured. I'm just going to set the pitch knobs to 12 o'clock to see, just kind of zero them out. Oh, it's a bit too high. Now, we can adjust the pitch like you saw me do there with the knob. We can also quantize this to various different I've lost the word. What's the word I'm looking for? Scales. Thank you very much, Rob, for going dense there. Okay, so we can quantize this to different scales. If I just press play and I'm just going to go to major, and you can see on the screen there it tells you, as well as the knob having the indicators around it, you can see that there. Go to a minor, pentatonic, major, and you've got many options. You can also store some user presets. You can create your own scales in there. I'm going to turn that to off and just have this free running. Actually, before I do that, let's just go to, say, major. If I then turn this knob, you'll hear it it sounds like it's aliasing. It's actually just stepping in semitones. Okay, so let's stop that for a second. Let's look at Granular, because this is where the power of the ADDAC 112 really comes in, I think. So let's turn up the volume for the Granular. This is the grains volume control. We have a grains feedback as well. We're not going to use that today. Now, nothing's happening. That's because we don't have any grains playing. So I'm just going, before I start them playing, I'll just talk through a couple of the controls. So this first knob here, top left, will dictate the start position for each grain. And you can see that vertical line as I turn this, scrubbing through the waveform. So I can choose a start point. I'm going to just start there. And then this one is the length of grain. And you get the second line representing the end point of each grain. Then we have this one here, which they call the intermittency. So this is basically kind of the gap between grains. Now you don't really see this on the screen until you've got some grains playing. So I'm just going to leave that at 0. Then we have the direction of play. Obviously in the middle, it's kind of a 50-50. And then you could have it all going forward, all going backwards, or anything in between. And then we have the grain volume. So you can, and this is the minimum volume of grain. Now, one cool thing about this is that you have these secondary knobs here, and these are for the deviation, which is basically randomizing all the controls they're associated with. So let's introduce some grains. We can have, I think, up to 17, and the third digit along the top left there tells you how many grains you've got. So I'll crank this up to, let's just say 4. Choose a nice area. I think there. And I'm going to introduce a little bit of this deviation. So some deviation of start points. And then you see the grains themselves actually represented on the screen as well, which is pretty cool. I'm also going to add some deviation to the length of grains. And I think a little bit of deviation for the intermittency. So they're going to be a little bit spaced out, and it's going to, kind of bounce around based on that control. So let's increase that a bit. Now I'm going to increase the deviation here, which is the kind of probability of repeating, the grain repeat, for this section. So this knob isn't about grain direction. That's all done because it's 50% there. Turn it anti-clockwise and you're going to get more reversed. Turn it clockwise, you'll get more going forwards. But the grains repeating is quite a fun idea, especially when you get to a point where you really like a part of that waveform. You can get this to repeat more, so you can increase it so that it's going to repeat a hell of a lot more, or barely anything at all. In fact, I do think it goes to 0. So the toggle switch for this is repeat percentage, or you can go repeat X, which is the number of repeats you're going to get. I like leaving on percentage and using this little knob to control it. Right, let's just turn those down a minute. So the block here at the bottom left, that big white block, that's actually for representing the envelope. So we have a grain envelope here with just ADDAC decay. So let's just crank these so you can see in that display. Now we have a pretty aggressive envelope. I'm going to turn that back so they'll fade out slowly. They'll come in just a little bit soft, not completely kind of cranked, but just a bit. Let's turn that up. Let's increase the number of grains. I'll double it to 8. just moving the start point to later on in the audio, and then back to the start. So something that's quite useful using this start position is that you might have captured audio which has space at the front of it like this one does. There's no point having grains going from right at the beginning because there's no audio there. So this lets you basically trim your samples to the place you want it to be, which is quite useful. Now, this has been a pretty kind of basic overview, but you can, even with this level of complexity going on where I haven't really done anything, there's no CV or anything, you can still do something quite fun. So you could increase the drive volume and just kind of have a beat going at the same time while playing with the grains. So let's do that. So let's turn up the drive volume and let's just start some beats going. Okay, so that's using, well, the incoming audio there was that Rhodes piano sound. Let's just clear that buffer. So there's nothing recorded now. I'm going to make a new recording, and this time I'm going to use the drums. Let's just see. I haven't tried this, so let's just see what it sounds like. I'm going to hit new recording and play that. That's plenty. Okay, so let's turn down the number of grains. Let's just increase the volume. Everything else is turned to 0, and let's add some grains. You can already hear that there's a lot of backwards direction going on. So I'm going to use 3, well, let's go for 4 grains. I'm going to get all these playing backwards, and I'm going to sharpen up the envelope so that it becomes not quite a gate, but very nearly like that. And I'm going to make the grains shorter. Find an area I like. Just going to introduce a little bit of reverb here from the tip-top Z-verb. Okay, so you can see hopefully that there's an awful lot you can do with this before you've even patched anything in. When you start using just the rest of your rig to trigger things, you could just use PAMs, I guess. Would do a good job of triggering certain events, or sample and hold type things. There's an awful lot you can do with it. Now I will dig deeper, like I said, in the next video. We'll talk more about pitch, because you can control this with pitch. You have volts per octave for granular pitch and for the loop pitch. Particularly fun with the granular, because what the 112 does is it will let existing grains ring out as it starts creating the new ones, and then you get kind of almost like a wave of pitch changes going on. In fact, I'm just going to do this now. Let's just patch something in. So I'm going to just patch in Metropolix into the volts per octave. In fact, I'll clear that buffer and I'll use the Rhodes one again. Let's just get that going. Okay, let's stop that. Okay, and if I turn up the grains, so Metropolix is running. It's just really basic sequence going. There's nothing fancy. There's no accumulator or anything. Let's just find a nice area of this audio. Add a few more. So I've got 8 grains now. And we'll soften that envelope again. I've just turned the reverb off for it there. So that introduces a whole new aspect to it. I'm just going to turn that off. So the sequence isn't running anymore, but you can hear that the grains have still picked up the pitch information, because I think the pitch is coming in pre-grain, not post-grain, or during the grain, as it were. Okay, so let's turn that down. I hope that's been of some interest. I think that the 112 is a fascinating module and is brilliant for the granular stuff, as well as just looping and capturing audio, because I think the buffer's minutes in this rather than the seconds you get in some other things. Now, you've probably noticed I've got arbor here, I've got beads there, the bitbox can do some granular stuff itself, I've got clouds. So I think in a future video I will look at more in detail at this, and then I'll do another one where I compare them all and look at the pros and cons, because there's definitely no king of the hill. I think it's a case of use what's right for the job at the time and the space. So my main rig is, what is it? So it's 18U and it's 160 HP wide. Sorry, 168 HP wide. So the ADDAC doesn't look anywhere near as space consuming in that rig as it does here. But actually there are many opportunities to use this even in a smaller setup. So do let me know what you'd like to see more of or hear more of. I will do much more detail, well, I'll actually do some detail with the patch bay, and we'll start integrating it more into a full rig for doing a full track. Thanks very much, I've been Rob, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye-bye.